Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer 1745 here with my continuing playthrough of Hearts of Iron 3 with Black Icy. There it is. Last episode. Scattered, and since that headquarters there instead of just capital connected, let's send them back here to help control France. And it probably has a bunch of other stuff attached to it. Ah, Vichy. Yes. Build 5 meshes. Okay, annual espionage. Okay. Very good. I'm going with just extras. That. And go with national focus. Okay. Manpower, that's nice. 20% bonus would be good. Octung Panzer, 10% bonus, but building speeds. Luftwaffe, manpower only 5% bonus. Examine our aircraft factor. Help out. Aircraft. Plan 5%. Help with shipyards, that would be price economics. Come back to time. Money. Horses. I notice that doesn't help with oil. Is our only thing that we are not doing so well on. I think we're going to do the Z plan. Different. And build new shipyards. We'll get 3 yards or increase. These would all be as lose, so we're going to go with it. That would help production beyond just this year. Production for bonus for 1 year might be bigger, but on years going out, having those shipyards I think will ultimately be better for us. Long-term investment, no, we don't need the money. We'd rather have the ICs, and we're no longer in the place to get new. Okay, I'm going to do this even though it's unnecessary. It's probably going to cost. Prepare a plan and prepare the defense of the Balkan region. This, of course, and I don't know what revolver held. Done. This for his next version, but this should have a check for Allied control of Egypt, maybe some other places as well, but at least Egypt maybe. So, and then just simply make it so that it fires on X date, like now 43, or you know, later if the conditions change. So, you know, like we're playing in 45, the Allies finally get back here, then this could fire. And most of the reason I want to do this is to explore and see what it's offering here. Excuse me. Okay. Oberbefehl Schaber, Südost, I guess southeast, was formed by pure, I think, order number 47 in the 28th of December 1942 with the effect of January 1943 with the, okay, new Heeres Group OOB. Heeres Group F was appointed Südost. HQ for Heeres Group E was subordinated to the new OB. Note for players: in the order to launch the Balkan campaign events, you need to accept the deployment of the theater HQ. All other events need the flag from this starting point. Okay, so do we accept this HQ or not? We're going to accept it. It will give us maybe a permanent Balkan campaign of minus 2.5. And I say maybe a permanent because generally the game ends in 68. But there may be a other events. I hope there are at some point. Whether you're winning or losing, if you've lost the Balkans, you shouldn't still be paying for this. But at some point to remove the Balkan campaign preparations effect. So I'm presuming that is at some point happen. Know it, but presuming at some point. Okay, so we're here. Have this. And List has been put in charge of it. Okay, he was pulled from another command. Well, we'll leave that there for the moment because I don't have much to do with. And with that, okay, well, now we're up this by invading this. Cruel. Well. Okay. There's more stuff. Not just stuff. Okay. So they're deciding Republic of China Nanjing, which is sort of the reorganized republic here. Maybe a good thing. Them. Definitely the historical thing. Maybe turning regions over to a fighter bomber prototypes has advanced. Good. I think that's good out. Yes. Well, they're all way out of date and they do affect. Yeah, let's start with it. The USS Texas is lost and the Arkansas. That battle happened. And the monthly outbreak of partisans. Oh wow. Lots of events. Maybe that's what we'll code. Well, list. Oh no, you're up there. Okay. Well, we'll just deal with this one. Okay, Schnell Division West. Edgar Fuchtingler was appointed commander of a forming unit called Schnell Division West, Fast Division West. Excuse me. The Schnell Division was conceived to be highly mobile units that would be stationed in France to serve as a rapid response force. Being highly motorized, they would be able to cover a great deal of ground, reach any point of invasion. Schnell divisions were to be more heavily motorized than a Panzer division. German industry was already hard pressed to produce arms and vehicles for the Eastern Front. As vehicles were in short supply, Plechtinger turned to Becker, whom he had known from before the war, to generate the equipment needed to motorize his unit. Okay. As we know from history, the main problem with this is the lack of air power, and just the inability to effectively move with a lot of air attacks. In 1943, and so that having a central response force isn't that effective if you can't get it to the front in a reasonable amount of time. 1943, Becker began converting the Hotchkiss H-35 and H-39 light tanks. Now, the only difference really effectively between the 35 and the 39 is that the 39 has a longer barrel, so that the round in it, I believe, I'm pretty sure, is the same, round, the same cartridge that goes in each of the 37 millimeter gun. But the H-35 had, and I'll say this literally, if you know what that means not figuratively, means it actually had the same gun as the World War I tank FT-17s. And I mean that in the sense that as they were decommissioning, finding that some of the FT-17s were no longer any good, they were pulling the World War I guns out and putting them in the H-35s and the R-35s. There were no. They used the same. Now they did manufacture new guns too, but they reused the World War I surplus guns. This isn't not the same model, the same guns, as well as I do believe new production too. They got it in production, but they designed the tank to use the World War I guns, the same guns, so that they can use, because they had lots and lots of FT-17s still around, and a lot of them had machine guns in them. And in a way, they may be a little more effective with the machine gun, but especially since later on, the 37 millimeter can't punch heavy armor, or most tank armors. So, but you could still drive around and machine gun people with them. So that they were the same gun. Well, this, of course, becomes apparent, especially with sort of the Polish campaign and watching that, that you need a more penetrative, powerful type gun. And simply by increasing the barrel length, the bullet that goes out of it picks up more speed, so it will penetrate more. And so without any other changes, just making it longer. So that's the H-39. It's the same. Otherwise, I don't know if a rivet or something is in a different place, but otherwise they're virtually the same vehicles, which carried a 37 millimeter gun and refit them to mount the 75 millimeter Pak 40 anti-tank gun or the 105 millimeter light field howitzer 16 assault gun. Well, howitzer. Oh, as an would be as an assault gun, because howitzer really is an assault gun. These were the units that were used extensively in equipping the reformed 21st Panzer Division. Okay, so get the 21st Panzer Division, great. 29th Waffen-Grenadier Division der SS Italienisch Number 1. After the Warsaw Uprising in 1944, the 29th Waffen-Grenadier Division der SS Russisch Number 1 was disbanded, and its number given to the Italian division formed September 44 from disaffected fascist and Italian POWs who volunteered for SS duty. Division saw action in Anzio, but was mostly used as anti-partisan duties. These they used Italian weapons equipment and uniforms with Waffen SS insignia. Yeah, as shown in as by the division title. It was not an SS division, it was a division of the SS, meaning it didn't meet Himmler's and other guys' racial ideas, whether as a Russian Slavic division or as an Italian division. So, but it was this version was equipped almost exclusively, not like this guy you're seeing here. I mean, that you hear me talk a lot about lying with pictures. The Sturmgewehr, the SS helmet, the SS pattern camouflage. They wore Italian helmets. They're and I don't know if there's any color photos of them. I've seen some color photos of the the uniforms that were that have been preserved. So original uniforms, and not colorized things. Colorizing always lies, even because you're adding color over black and white, so it always lies to some degree. But also, the people don't necessarily know what they're looking at, and because you don't, you may have never seen the original, and you don't know what the original was. But they were wearing Italian uniforms, but they had the SS rank insignias, the black squares with the little normally little sort of square pips or other sort of thing. But instead of that, they had sort of a red. I don't think it was really a pinkish. It was more of a red. And again, I've seen a few photos, and I'm not sure, but they were red. So they were different. And then on the right sleeve, they had a sort of an Italian fascist eagle thing with a red sort of felt background and stuff. So it was gray Italian fascist uniforms with the black sort of shirts and red sort of symbols. And probably, presumably, they weren't National Socialists or Nazis. They were fascists, which is a distinction and a difference. Okay, so and this event, I'm going to take it just because I'm greedy and want units in there, or units. But this event should not fire unless Italy surrendered, because Mussolini would not have allowed this. But yeah, we'll take it. Schwer SS Panzer Abteilung. In April 43, the Waffen-SS ordered the creation of a series of heavy panzer battalions equipped with the new Tiger I tanks for use in the offensive actions on the Eastern Front. Each of the heavy tank battalions was attached to a corps of the Waffen-SS. Upon formation, the 102nd SS Heavy Panzer Battalion was attached to the 2nd SS Panzer Corps. Originally, each heavy tank battalion was composed of a single company of Tiger I's attached to each respective SS Panzer Division of the Panzer Corps. By July 43, the predecessor of the 102nd Panzer Regiment of the 2nd SS Panzer Division was thus equipped with 14 Tiger I's. Now, and as a lot of the Durer of the SS divisions were equipped with captured equipment, old equipment from, maybe German, but old equipment, outdated stuff. A lot of the other stuff, SS units got priority. And not just the SS fanboys. I sort of say it that way because they don't, a lot of them, some of them may be modern Nazis, but I think a lot of them are just, these are cool warrior type guys, so I want to make the distinction that they may not politically believe in genocide of peoples and other things. These are cool warrior type guys. So that's why I'm calling them SS fanboys. look on the SS as being the elites and they're the best and they do all this stuff, and including like divisions like Leibstandarte and Das Reich and Vinking and other sorts of divisions. And I would say that they were better on average, these units, than the average unit at the same time in the German army. But also what is really sort of the better part about them is, and I know I've talked about this before, is that a lot of the standard units in the German army, whether they be a panzer division or an infantry division, stopped getting replacement equipment, or it just trickled into them. And I mean that to some of them it stopped, or it stopped and then it trickled, then it stopped, then it trickled, or whatever. And both replacement equipment and personnel in. They did get some, it was coming in, but most of the units by, say, 43 were operating at rarely above, like, say, 60% of their full strength. Very few of the units were operating. What was happening is all the equipment was being created and being made, and the personnel trained, and they were forming new units, new panzer divisions, new infantry divisions, calling them Volksgrenadier divisions and that kind of thing. Everything other than some of the elite regular divisions, every division was changed to a grenadier division. Maybe someday I'll make a video on that. What's a grenadier? What's a dragoon? What's a fusilier? What's a musketeer? And I don't, not just in the modern sense, but in, what's a hussar? What's a, I don't know if any of you would be interested in that, why are some cavalry units called dragoons, and why are some called hussars, and why are some called horse regiments? But so, they sort of changed the name to like grenadiers, just for sort of unit morale purposes. They left like the Jaeger divisions and some Fusilier divisions, and a few that had specialty names. But they were partially, I think it was just simply to please Hitler, is more divisions, sending out more divisions, so that they kept a lot of the experienced divisions, alive by trickling in replacement men and replacement equipment, but they never got them back up to full strength. So that where if you sent the replacements out there to these well-experienced units, I think they would have done much better. Not just those units, I mean just overall the army would have done much better. But I know I've talked about this earlier. The Waffen-SS was limited in size for its German units. Definitely in its size in divisions. Personnel to some degree size for the Waffen-SS. And limiting it that way. And I think also limiting it in size of personnel too. But it didn't limit its number of people it could recruit. Meaning that if they go out in a battle and they lose 1,000 men in a division, well, we can recruit another 1,000 men. You can keep recruiting men, so you can fill replacement losses, combat losses, whatever. But you can't grow the overall size of the Waffen-SS from German units. That's why they had units that were Russian or Italian, as we just saw, that were of the SS, or SS units that were like Vinking, that had Norwegian and Swedish and other Danish recruits within the Waffen-SS, as well as Germans. And Vinking, it was a mixed unit, as well as like Dutch and other things. So some of those units, they could have more foreigners, and so the Waffen-SS did grow German-based units over time. Like the later on, you'll get Reichsführer SS, named after Himmler, and then Hitlerjugend, SS division. I forget some of the numbers of those right off the top of my head. And we'll probably see events creating those. So yes, it does expand over time, but it's limited. And so, but since it's limited, they keep getting replacement equipment and replacement personnel. So, Das Reich, for example, you know, it goes in and fights a battle, and eventually, at some point, it gets replacements. At some point, as we've seen, you know, they get pulled out of the front and sent back and completely re-equipped. Other times, it's just a trickle of new personnel into already existing stuff. So this is why the SS divisions did so much better on compared to an average the 7th Panzer Division, because the 7th Panzer Division will get a trickle in of new tanks and other things, but not nearly at the levels that the Waffen SS did over its time. Now, so that's a very real thing. Okay, so we're going to get some heavy divisions, expand air bases, build it, save our money. Supplies 1%. Number. We're going to save our money. Wartime fiscal policy. Not now. Give me a cool down there. Führer bunker. Führer bunker was an air raid shelter located near the Reichschancellery in Germany. It was part of the subterranean bunker complex, which was constructed in 2 major phases. One part in 1936 and another in 1943. Hitler took up residence in the Führer bunker 16th of January 1945, and it became the epicenter of the Nazi regime until the last week. Hitler married Eva Braun here during the last weeks, April 1945, shortly before suicide. Okay, now, as most of you know, who at least who've watched most of the series, I've this playthrough, just because various things, and I think overpriced, because it's a 5% IC reduction instead of a. I'm happy for the supply reduction, the manpower a little bit on some of these things, but I just think the IC is just a little bit much. So I've been rejecting a lot of them. The various Führer headquarters built around. This one I would force the players to do, because in 1936, the first part in 1943, it's just the only way I guess I wouldn't force the players to do it would be is if you're at peace with the Soviet Union and you're at peace or whatever, conquered Britain and enough of the other places so that they didn't feel threatened, because otherwise Hitler would just order this. And this is one thing I sort of like with the elements, is all those other Führer headquarters, you know, like I say, overpriced and whatnot, but some of them just didn't make sense when the events were fired, because I'd done the war differently, so you wouldn't necessarily do it, where this is just the Führer doing it. And I like messing with this, and this needs a check on it. Couldn't keep having that one fire. Okay. Something in 42. Weihnacht Ringsendung. Sorry, I'm butchering it. Again, you Germans don't space out your words, so I don't. I'm reading. I'm thinking night, so like Christmas night or something in there, I guess, because I'm seeing next. Christmas Ring broadcast was a wartime propaganda radio broadcast to promote the coherence between front and home. During 40 to 43, a special broadcast on the evening of December 24th, Helgeben exchanged greetings and regards between selected Wehrmacht soldiers and their families at the home front. This was a mixture of reports from occupied countries in which the soldiers were stationed, was prepared and coordinated between the Reichsradfunkgeschäft. See, if I sort of kind of know where it's broken up and I've sort of heard it, I can almost, because I think a German would understand me if I said Reichsradfunkgeschäft. I'd probably know what I was meaning. Some of these other things I'm butchering really badly. Wehrmacht Propaganda Kampagnen und Reich Postal Service. Okay. So, good. We like that. Deploy the 8th Squadron. Yes, we like that. Okay, raise the SS Schutzkampf Geschwald 101 from the Schutzkampfschule. No need. Well, is there a downside to this? I'm going no need. Maybe I should be doing it. Well, I'm going no because I don't know if there's a downside to this. Okay, I'll do. See what I get. So I would do it. Well, okay, that's a headquarters. That's a really cheap aircraft. Is that even a flying unit or is that a ground unit? Guess it's an air unit. Okay, well, where is it on the... Find it this way. Vessel. Oh, I don't know that that worked right. Okay, well... I guess maybe I should be doing these. Well, that worked better. The way I would be doing these, and I know I've said no to a few of the other ones, is I would be reducing organization levels. I did that, or training levels or something, because it's taking away from the home front training abilities. Okay. Volmag initially had 6 buildings for tank production built in 1941, expanded again with the construction of the huge Panzerhalle, which was finally completed in 43. Volmag initially produced the heavy half-track, the SDKFZ, how you would pronounce that necessarily, 9 heavy half-track, and the Panzer IV Aust F, and then the Aust G. Volmag became one of the largest tank manufacturers in the Third Reich. In October 43, Volmag produced a prototype of the Jagdpanzer IV in competition with Alket and won the contract for its production. The Volmag was solely responsible for the standard Jagdpanzer IV, although Alket later produced a hybrid version in smaller numbers and eventually produced at least 1,600 examples. The big difference between, and I don't know how it would be inside, and I think I mentioned this before, between the Volmag version and the Alket version. Sorry, just changing position here. Is the Volmag was much a lower profile tank, or tank killer. Had better armor protection because of that. And lower profiles, so harder to hit and that kind of thing. I don't know whether it was much more cramped to be in it than the Alket. The Alket was more like a box stuck on top of the top of the Panzer IV. The big thing is, compared to all the Panzer IVs, is these I think the very earliest types of them didn't, and I'd have to look that up. But basically, the Jagdpanzer IV had the same 75mm gun that the Panther did. Again, some early production may have not, but most of them at least had the Panther 75mm gun. So that was going really a lot faster, hitting a lot harder than the standard Panzer IV. And I think part of the reason for Alket later producing the hybrid version is that they just were partially because of bombing, or maybe mainly because of bombing, but also other things. Is it takes a lot more to build a tank turret, a lot more production time, so that if you're building tank hulls, but you're engines and drive chains and all that, but you're not building turrets rapidly enough, it's better to just stick the box on top of it and put it out there. Though it may have been also just a simple screaming need. We need something that can kill the KV-85 or something late in the war, the KV tanks, because at least in my opinion, from all the wargaming I've done, most Panzer IVs can deal with the T-34s, though, so, and generally a tank is better than no tank. Okay, so we're gonna build to get another tank factory. Yeah, we'll do that price. Schwerpanzer Abteilung 505. The Schwerpanzer Abteilung 505 was formed in January 1943. It was assigned to the 9th Army and fought at Kursk, and after Kursk it was attached to Heeresgruppe Mitte and fought at Smolensk. It was refitted with the Tiger II, Konings Tiger tanks in September 44 and fought with the 24th Panzer Division and the 5th Panzer Division in East Prussia until the end of the war. Do you want to form it? Yeah, at this price, yeah, I do. Veteran unit. I'm still saving up my money for more West Wall, so no need. We have rushed in a big stack of units that are, we disrupted one because there was 4. Invading division. Student is holding out here. That is good. Okay, Japan has decided to give Chinese territory to the Republic of Nanjing. Good. Well, oh, this is okay. This isn't one of those. I was just trying to see. So let me read this. Luftwaffe Kommando Südost. The formation of Luftwaffe Kommando Südost from elements of General Kido of the 10th Flieger Corps was ordered on the 1st of January 43. The Air Force Command HQ for the whole of the Southeastern Europe led air defenses and air support operations from Athens, Greece, as an independent command directly under Oberkommando der Luftwaffe in Berlin. It was responsible for Luftwaffe operations in Greece until September 43, and then for the entire Balkans. It was disbanded in October and retreated in Austria. Yes, okay, we'll take that. Headquarters. Okay. Fahrzeug und Motorenwerk GmbH. FOMO. Of course, I've heard of that. In Breslau, the factory, in the Breslau factory, 2 types of Caterpillar tractors were manufactured for the construction industry and for the forestry and agriculture. Products included tractors, diesel engines for stationary use and for shipping. But in 1943, as part of the preparations for war, a department, I'm not reading this well, am I? For special vehicles was created. During the war years, FOMO produced WASPs at its Breslau and Warsaw factories and was also involved in production of the Marder II. Okay, so we could build FOMO or not. Now, I almost sort of brought up this sort of topic earlier when we were dealing with the Becker events. How do I put? I'm trying to remember sort of the quote. There's never an obsolete weapon, or something like that. All weapons are still effective, or some sort of. Maybe I'll get the exact quote at some point, but it's something that I've taken to heart. An arrow will kill you just as well today as it did in 1066. Okay, in fact, they have much better arrows now, but even those same arrows. So, no weapons are useless. No weapons are not useful to, say, like the German army or the German armed forces. I'll expand it out. And so, like, Becker was converting substandard tanks that are still useful. And I've even, inside the Chieftain's Hatch, the guy who does that series, I love whenever he does some of the, I love all of his work, but when he does some of the tanks, and they recently went to, was it Saumur, wherever, the French Army Museum, and he got inside some of these tanks. Now, he's a sort of a big American type guy, and so trying to fit into some of these little French tanks, I mean, it's just almost impossible. He gets in there, but to the point that to operate the tank, at least one of the I think it was an R-35 or something like that, little 2-man tank, he'd have to chop his legs off because you know, you drive the tanks, like those tanks, like most, with 2 sticks, you know, one on each side of you, but instead of sticks that go straight up, they had handles that angled in over sort of the top of your legs. Well, you couldn't, because those handles would hit his knees. He couldn't move them, and there was nowhere else to have his feet on the pedals. There was nowhere else to move his legs to, so he'd have to literally chop his leg off, literally, to be able to drive that tank and be able to sit in the seat and do whatever else. So it would need massive modification. So a good friend of mine for many years, he was in the Marine Corps, and he was a tank driver in the Marine Corps, and he was a rather short guy, met the minimum height requirements for the U.S. Marine Corps. But he was, I'm not super tall, I'm over 6 feet, but to me he was sort of a short guy, and so that's why he was a tanker, is because he fit in a tank well. And this is what, like, Soviets and a lot of people, is they get sort of smaller people to be tankers. But this guy, who was an American tanker, an Abrams, but trying to fit into these little French tanks, so you'd have to find short people to get in those. So those, you know, those 37 millimeter guns that I was talking about earlier, they're still useful. They're not going to penetrate a Sherman. And if you encounter a Sherman with one of those tanks, you can shoot at it, and maybe you'll do some damage if a hatch is open and kill a crew member inside, or some similar sort of lucky shot element at it. But it's not of any real use. But if you're driving around on a battlefield and there's an American half-track, you can certainly shoot at that and do damage and kill the crew inside, the men inside of it. Now, of course, they can maybe kill you because they got a 50 caliber machine gun, and that may penetrate your armor. And so, roll around to, you know, 1943, 1944, a battalion of those French light tanks isn't going to be useful as a complete unit of them, because if they encounter any sort of opposition of other tank natures, they're not going to be any good against those tanks in any real effective way. But now if you mix those tanks with a bunch of Panzer IVs and a bunch of Panthers tanks out there, they're useful again, because you do run, you do engage enemy infantry. So you can, guys with bazookas, you can just be driving around with the other tanks and adding your firepower in a combined arms sense and attacking trucks, armored cars, half tracks. I sort of kind of think the Stuart M5 would be impervious to the 37mm gun, but I'm not absolutely sure on that. But, so, other vehicles out there, they can still operate against. So as an independent, effective battlefield tank, they still have a use, but no longer as a main or sort of independent tank. But as Becker was converting less useful, not useless, but less useful tanks to more useful self-propelled artillery, self-propelled anti-tank guns, so that can knock out a Sherman tank quite easily. As Pack 40 hit a Sherman tank, boom, basically done. As long as it's a good proper hit on it, it's done. And what brought this up is that they were making the Wasp and the Martyr too. And this comes down to I talked about earlier in many episodes, Germany was just unprepared for World War II. It was, no, it wasn't Italy who was just unprepared for any sort of major war, but it was still just unprepared. And so, and for, like talked earlier on about the ability to sustain operations as you're driving deeper and deeper into the Soviet Union, Germany just was unprepared for that in the initial campaign. This is sort of a similar thing. So that their production capabilities are limited. Now, they could grow their production capabilities. Germany could have done that before the war. And obviously, as we just saw with an earlier event, they were improving the BOMAG facilities and expanding and building new ones. So they were definitely doing that. Now, they were also being bombed at the same time, so other facilities were being destroyed. But along those things, they in essence, in a way, kept the Panzer II. They did basically stop the Panzer I, but they kept the Panzer II in production more or less until the end of the war. But as these two other vehicles, the Wasp and the Martyr. I've never really read a coherent or any sort of detailed operation of a Wasp, but presumably it worked well enough, or the Germans wouldn't have kept doing it, and it seems to be good. That mounts a 105mm proper howitzer. It seems to do well. It's softly sort of a small vehicle to do that. I figure it can't carry too many rounds in it for sustained artillery barrages. But so the basic German self-propelled proper howitzer is on a Wasp now, and that goes throughout the war. They also have the bigger Rommel, which is the 150mm gun that's based off of a Panzer III hull, basically. Some elements of the Panzer IV in it, but Panzer III hull. And then you have the Martyr II, which is the Pack 40 anti-tank gun, just mounted again in a Martyr, or in a Panzer II hull. So they kept these alive. They even reduced the armor from earlier Panzer II levels, just because the armor was not going to be effective at stopping any sort of tank rounds. So they just thought it would be better to, especially when you're mounting the heavy 105mm of the Pack 40 on the gun, to lighten the vehicle, lighten the armor up just to stop basic rifle rounds and light shell fragments. So they kept these into production throughout the full war, and just converted it from being a training tank / reconnaissance tank. And like I say, a 20mm armed reconnaissance tank is still effective even in World 42, 43, 44, but because of the inability to produce enough Panzer IVs or other things, it was more important to build mortars out of them and do as sort of substitute tanks. Okay. Yes, we'll do that. Now the Americans, okay, you've won there, so you back there. Did put small units of things like Shermans and others around into infantry divisions. They did that as well. But the Germans didn't have... Yes, we'll give you that. We'll sell you supplies. Didn't have that luxury so much of doing a lot of that. So that's sort of what the Martyr 2s to some degree function as, sort of substitute tanks. They didn't use them like tanks. They weren't stupid like that, but they okay, I thought that was that. But they did use them as self-propelled guns. When I say didn't use them, weren't stupid like to use them as a substitute tank, meaning they didn't use them aggressively as a breakthrough panzer concentration of force, attacking the enemy with speed and velocity that the infantry out there is partially just simply afraid of being run over by the tank treads, you know, let alone machine guns firing and big guns firing. That's part of what a tank is. No, they used the Martyr 2s as a sort of reaction force to enemy thrusts of other tanks, and so you sort of know where the enemy tanks are because your infantry units that are falling back and reporting the attack, you move into like an ambush type position and then you ambush them, or they would move them up as a fire support, in which, you know, there's already an infantry screen in front of them. They'd move up and, you know, put a 75mm high explosive round into a building that there was, you know, like a machine gun nest or something in. So they'd use them in a supportive role, sort of as a substitute tank, but not as you would use a group of tanks, you know, boldly and aggressively, because they were so lightly armored. They had to use them, you know, in a different sort of manner, but it was sort of that kind of thing. Okay, 78th Sturm Division. At the beginning of 43, the 78th Sturm Division was organized with additional adjustments to its strength and organization over the next several months. Each of the 3 infantry regiments was redesignated a Sturm Regiment, and the designation Sturm Assault reflected the division's increased strength, which eventually included a subordinate Sturmgeschütz gun, heavy mortar, and Nuremberwaffe rocket launcher battalions, and a tank destroyer unit equipped with Martyr 2s, as well as extra regimental artillery support. Okay. Sturmgeschütz heavy mortar. Is that a Brummbär? The 43. That seems a little early for them. I'm taking this as not being, because of the heavy mortar, not being the standard Stug 3 or a Stu 42. The Stu 42 is the sort of Sturm howitzer 42, in which it has a 105mm howitzer there in place of the 75mm gun. I'm taking this as either the very limited production of taking sort of the SIG 33 infantry gun and mounting it in a heavy armored box on a Panzer IV hull. So they did that sort of leading up to, or whatever, dealing around the Stalingrad fight. But then later they did a more purpose-built, again on a, I think they were still on Panzer III hulls, maybe Panzer IVs, Panzer IIIs or IVs, much better built, shorter barreled. Still, it uses the same, or a similar infantry gun. They've tailored it more towards the shorter barrel, more towards mounting within the tank. Use the same ammunition. I'm guessing that's what they mean, as opposed to the rocket launcher Sturm Tiger thingy. Is this. So deploy them. Yes. Yes, indeed. Army Group E was created on January 1 from the 12th Army units. This group was distributed throughout the eastern Mediterranean area under command of Luftwaffe General Oberst Alexander Lohr. Okay. Why we're doing that? Well, oh, and we got a tech bonus somewhere. High velocity gun research. And now we have 43 armor. Yay. And how much are we in the red here? No. Go up. Okay. Wholly in green since we already have that bonus. And various texts. Okay, I hope you've enjoyed my rambling on about various things. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks for liking the videos. If you haven't already, please subscribe. And of course, post questions, comments, suggestions, corrections below. Love hearing from you. See you next time for more Hearts of Iron.